At the end of last year, 2012, we put in place a number of legislations, of course, through the Ministry of Transport, to ensure that we stem the rising cases of road accidents and, of course, to bring sanity to our roads. At that point, we convinced ourselves that we had finally found a solution to impunity on the road, and we had found a solution to road carnage. Several months on, some of those vices, some of those acts that have been prohibited in the legislation that we put in place are going on as if nothing ever happened. So what really is the problem? Now, this morning we can authoritatively therefore say that the solution to our problems does not begin and end with policy making and legislation. We need something more. We need probably, for example, involvement of communities, and that is why today on Good Morning Kenya we are talking about resilience of communities in the face of disasters. Are we going to sit down and say the people of Budalangi, the people of Kano Plains, the people of Kitengela and Kiserian are totally helpless in the face of the current flooding? We are going to have those answers for you on Good Morning Kenya today. Good Morning Kenya begins now. I am your host, David Owino. We have with us, joining us in studio, Julius Kabubi. Julius Kabubi has worked a lot in areas of disaster risk reduction, has worked with Red Cross, has worked with the Kenya Meteorological Department, and currently is a disaster risk reduction advisor to the East African community. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you, David.
And we have with us also Edward Wanyonyi. Edward Wanyonyi is a science writer, vice chair at the Disaster Risk Reduction Network of African Journalists. That just say it as DIRAJ. It's a very long name. But welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
You have also been writing a lot and engaging a lot of communicators on issues of disasters and disaster risk reduction. That is purely what we are going to talk about this morning. I want to start from the very obvious point, the question everyone is asking. We have always witnessed floods in this country. We have always witnessed various forms of disasters in this country. But when it happens like it has never happened again. We are always caught unawares. So, for example, the current floods, what exactly is going on? Why is it happening to Kenya like it has never happened again? And actually, some of those places, the same places, the places that have always been the casualties. So what exactly is happening? Maybe I'll start with you, Julius.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, David. I think one thing we need to understand is that floods, droughts, landslides, all those are common hazards which will come today, they'll come tomorrow, they'll come every now and then. And therefore, it is not unusual that we are having floods. They'll also come next year and so on. What we need to know is that when they come, are we prepared for them? Because these are just normal climatic occurrences. So what is lacking is, are we really prepared for these floods or these disasters when they come? When we look at what has been happening on, it's like our memory is very short, because we have seen people losing lives, people losing livelihoods through these disasters, but yet we don't act with speed, we don't act to alleviate this kind of problems. So it is not that the knowledge is not there, but there's something missing. Are we reaching the communities? Is the knowledge of these floods, is the knowledge of these disasters really reaching the community? So the question is, are we really informing the community who needs to take precautions? That's where the problem is.
Yeah. You're talking about the community being involved in terms of getting information.
Exactly.
You know, I would say like at the beginning of the year, actually towards the end of last year, the Kenya Meteorological Department warned that it was going to rain.
Yeah.
They told us that we were going to have rain. But the problem that most of us have with the information that we get from the Kenya Meteorological Department is that it is not ready for the consumption of the community in terms of in terms of being prepared. They will say it's going to rain, but the community would want to listen to things like it's going to flood in your area. So who should pick this information and translate it into a piece of information that can be consumed by the local people and know in Budalangi we'll have floods, or in Northeastern we are going to have floods this time around?
Thank you, David. I think It's good you asked me that question because formerly I was working with the Kenya Met Service, and therefore I know quite a lot on what goes on there. The Kenya Met Service has evolved through a lot of science. They have increased their skills for forecasting. In fact, I think these days you don't hear a lot of complaints on the radio that they said this will come and this. Most of the forecast now they are giving is quite accurate.
It's accurate, yeah.
Yeah, it's quite accurate. And they are able to give these warnings, early warning, in good time. But what is happening is, despite that the Met Service itself is taking initiatives, I think there is still a disconnect. The Met Service has decentralized the services. For example, you find they are now working with what they are calling county meteorological directors. These are people who are supposed to take the information closer down to the people. Before we came to the new constitution, they had what they call now the provincial meteorological directors. These are people who are supposed to engage with the administration, they engage with the communities. When the PC is going to address the community, they should be there to give that information, to advise the farmers, to advise the community on forecasted disasters and so on and so on. So the Met Service have done its part. The problem is that the community themselves, they don't seem really to understand this. And I think that's why we need to really move further. What do we need to do then so that the common man, the Wanjiko down there, is able to get this information and use it? And I would like to give an example, like the Kaserian bridge you're talking about. That bridge, because I live near there, is almost every year.
So you're in danger.
I'm an endangered species already. Every year, actually, it's like a richo. The river must always claim some 2-3 people. We have readers staying there. We have the community staying there. But sometimes you find there is this lack of real understanding of the danger itself. So we need really to look, all of us, to engage ourselves, because disasters are not a one-person business. It's not it is everybody's business. All of us must come and see what is wrong, what do we need to do here. Why are we not having, for example, a boat there on the bridge, that this bridge has swallowed so many people? When you see this water up to this level, please don't try to.
I think I've seen one in Narok.
But
Narok, Nairobi.
Exactly, that is one place. So why are we not having this kind of thing? We need really to get the community and accelerate our training to them, our discussion with them, our awareness program with them. That's what we need to do. Because
you mentioned community, I want to forget about the community for just a while and throw this to Edward. As a communicator, do you think the information that you're getting from the Met Service is ready for your consumption, is something that you can use to warn people living in various places that it's going to flood, for example?
Thank you so much, David. I think when you're looking at this aspect of scientific communication, we have to understand one thing, that the public requires information packaged in a manner that they can be able to take it. When the Met Service is issuing alerts, you realize that it's a very technical discussion. They will talk about the cloud formations, they will talk about the density, they will talk about areas which are going to have a lot of, for example, their forecasted precipitation taking place. Now that cannot happen and connect very well with Kipkorir, who is in Washingishu. It cannot happen very well with Hadija, who is in Kwale. It cannot work very well with someone like Owino, who is in Nyakach, simply because they need to realize the information in a very nicely and simple way. And that's why we realize that the Met Service, I'm told, they want to transition towards becoming an authority from becoming a department. One of the changes which they're trying to envision is how can they be able to implement and even support community awareness initiatives. And that's why we're saying that with a very expanded media space in Kenya, we right now have vernacular radio stations. How many times have you heard the provincial meteorological officer or the person in charge going to this vernacular station and talking about what we're expecting? It hardly happens, you see. So it is an issue whereby you find that the...
I haven't met any.
You haven't met many. Yes, you haven't met many. You cannot... It's simply because an issue of the structure that the Met Service has in terms of communication and public engagement, and also in terms of the budgeting that they have, and also the programs that they have, because they have to look at communication as a program. side by side the scientific programs they have. As they're budgeting to have the weather stations, they should also budget and see how many programs are we going to run on area, for example, for communities which are living in Nyanza region. How many programs can we be able to ensure that we can facilitate in schools, in churches, in hospitals? Like right now we're having the rainy season. You know that there are going to be a lot of program challenges in terms of cholera, typhoid. How many of those programs have they been disseminated across? Because that is what we're talking about, an integrated approach towards communication when it comes to disaster risk reduction.
But then are we saying therefore that we need to have just one body that is dealing with disasters of all forms? Because when the Met Service, for example, gives the information that it's going to rain, or we are going to have El Nino, for example, translating El Nino to cholera, translating El Nino to bilharzia, for example, or to landslides, is a whole different thing. So are we, what are we saying here? Are we saying that we need to have, for example, drought authority combined with Met Service and combined with something else, Ministry of Health, a department, the Ministry of Health or something, or Public Health and Sanitation?
Let me just say something that I know, of course, there are programs in place, especially in terms of harmonizing the national disaster management policy together with the national fire policy, so that they can become together. We can have the National Disaster Management Act if it goes through Parliament, that is, and that should be able to create the National Disaster Management Authority. Now, to be able to oversee. Now, question being is, how are we going to harmonize that body, which is going to be formed if Parliament passes that bill, with the current National Disaster Management, Drought Management Authority and the Met Service, and even the Red Cross? Because the challenge that government has failed over the years is that it has abandoned the role of disaster management to Red Cross. Now, Red Cross is not a government entity in as much as it's formed by an act of government. We cannot have floods taking place in Nyakach and
we see
the only
Red
thing
Cross
is
there.
Red Cross. We don't have, you don't have government there. It is appalling, and we hope that the new government right now is going to take action and ensure that we have a citizen-based initiative that does not necessarily depend on Red Cross. We cannot have road accidents and we expect Red Cross to rush there. Government is just sitting back.
Of course, we expect Red Cross to run there.
Of course they have, but we think government has a responsibility to put in place measures that can ensure that whether Red Cross is there or not, citizens are taken care of. On the other hand, it will require now a framework. That legislative framework will need to be put in place to ensure that communities are not only empowered, but also communities are very well prepared to be able to know that we have been given a warning that there's going to be floods in this area, and so we need to ensure that we move out of areas which they are going to have landslides, or we move out of areas which are going to be flooded completely, so that we don't just wait for the army helicopters to take us out of the waters.
Can I interject?
Okay.
I think there has been some good examples. Let me go back to what my colleague Wanyanyi has said. If you look at what has been happening in Budarangi, I think you bear me witness that this season we have not had much of Budarangi. And it's not only this year, even last year and the year before. Because there has been community involvement. What happened is that the World Bank came up with a project through the Ministry of Special Programs and the Kenya Met Services. And they have enabled the community to be doing the observations themselves. So they have marked the river Nzoia, which normally brings the floods in Budarangi. And this data is relayed online to Kenya Met Service. They are analyzed, and when they know the levels of water have risen in Mumias or upstream the river, they're able to warn the people downstream at Budarangi in a very good time. And that's why this time, or the last year, you have not had much cases in Budarangi. So the whole thing, what he's saying is that we need really to involve the community. If the community are not there, then of course, whether with whichever policies, we may not really win the battle. That is one example which is working very well. Then the other issue is on the structure of our disaster management framework in Kenya. I think you saw the other day we came up now with the National Drought Management Authority. I think this was a move in the right direction. And until now, we reach a place where we come up with a National Disaster Management Authority to give the legal status, to give the funding so that these people are able to respond. They're able to come up with programs. We'll always be reacting, firefighting, always. But if we have such an organization which will be able now to form its own programs, they will know how to preposition themselves before events. They will have a better uptake of the early warning given by the Met Service, and therefore they have the mechanisms to reach the community early enough. But otherwise, me and Wanyonyi here, we have a lot of information, but reaching, how do we reach the community? This is the question. I think those are the areas that we need really to address. Yeah.
Okay, I want to move a bit from there, and okay, still on floods, but now from the villages to the cities. We have seen a greater impact of the floods this time round on the urban settlements, more than okay. Initially, we've been talking a lot about villages and places out there in the rural areas, but this time we have seen a greater impact on the cities. On Monday, for example, Kenyatta Avenue for some time was not passable on foot. You had to remove your shoes. There was a lot that was happening there. We've talked about Kiserian, Rongai, and places like that. People dying in the urban centers. Do we have? Let's just explore the reasons behind the impact in the urban areas. Is it our planning? Is it our the way we put our infrastructure? What exactly is happening?
Maybe I took up the part of the scientific part, and Wanyonyi will talk on the other part of urban planning. Floods actually results when the conveyance channel are overtoppled. The water cannot be contained in the conveyance channels. So that's when the floods happens. And then, of course, they spread to the other grounds, and then, of course, people can't pass, vehicles can't pass. This is one thing that you must understand. The floods in the urban areas, you find we have a lot of impervious surfaces. Infiltration of the water is not there because of the paved structure of the surface. And therefore, you find with heavy intensity rainfall, you generate a lot of water very, very fast. And this water has all of it to converge in the same old drainage system that were made a long time ago. We have not expanded them. The city is expanding. So as it expands, then of course you are creating more impervious surface, which means the concentration time for the floods to reach the channel is becoming smaller and smaller.
What you say, water should naturally infiltrate into the ground?
Into the surface, of course.
Okay.
Naturally. And you find when you have that kind of situation, you don't have the water lining over the channels, the conveyance channels, the rivers. So the rivers are just open channels for drainage. So when you have so much coming to the river at the shortest time, then of course you have floods. That's a typical case of what happens with urban flooding. And of course, the reasons are very obvious. The city has been expanding greatly. Look at the roof catchment, which is every house that come up, you're generating a lot of room from the roof. Yes. When it comes to the surface, there's nowhere to go. It has to run very quickly to the channel. And then, of course, so what we need to do is to redesign our conveyance channels. This is scientifically, there's nothing else that we need to do. Open up the channel, increase them, widen them, so that they're able to take more water within the shortest time possible. That's the address that we need to do.
I think my take on that issue is basically a failure in terms of planning, as you said. It's a failure in terms of planning from government. We've been having the Ministry of Local Government for years. And one of the things you expect from the Ministry of Local Government is basically to look at this kind of information that is coming in terms of population density in areas, in cities. We know that there has been a massive rural-urban migration for the past almost 20 years. This is information which the Ministry of Local Government